Welcome to Terra Juno Painting Stuff. Have you ever woken up in the morning and thought to yourself, I wish I had a sore back and neck today? Well, keep watching because I have the perfect painting technique for you. In this video, we're going to be starting a male portrait from life using a stationary grid, and we're going to be working in oil paint. This video is going to go over the portrait drawing and the first paint layer. I will be completing the painting in a subsequent video. A stationary grid is just a viewfinder that's been clamped to the easel so that it doesn't move. Welcome to my studio. Today we're going to be painting a male portrait from life. We're going to be using a method that is slightly new for me, and that is strapping the viewfinder to my easel. I often use a viewfinder when I work from life just to get in general proportions and ideas and to sort of more frame off where I want that composition to begin and end. And it's handy when you're working from the figure to just figure out what you want that composition to be. But I normally hold it, so I thought today I would try strapping it to the actual easel to see if that improves the accuracy or makes it easier. I'm excited to try this method and find out. I'm painting on a 16 by 20 inch panel that has been primed with gray acrylic paint. I wanted a slightly wider format, so I've measured off these two buffer areas so that the squares on my panel and the squares on my grid are in proportion to each other. And I have an audience. Is that tasty? I adjusted my grid so that my model fit within the frame while I sat back in my chair. I started with an HB pencil directly onto the panel. So the idea here is that the grid is going to help you keep everything in proportion and just help with getting some of the angles and sizes right that when you're just using sight and drawing sometimes can be a little bit off and it can be hard to tell. This grid is just two pieces of cardboard glued together and painted gray. I attached the string and I left one end of each string loose and just put a piece of tape to secure it. I did this so I would be able to tighten the strings if they became loose. And you can paint your grid any color you like or not paint it. I like to paint mine a neutral color like gray, and then I put little spots of white and black paint on it just so I can judge the values that I'm looking at through the grid a little bit better. It's important when you're using a grid to pick an anchor point so that you can keep your body position in line with the model and keep it actually stationary. And this is easier said than done. For this painting, I picked the ear as my anchor point. I tried to keep it on the last line of the right, but I found it hard to keep still. It's hard not to move closer to your work as you're drawing. I was trying to stay a bit further back from the panel so that I could film the process as well. And I did find I kept leaning in towards the panel, but also holding my arm up was making my neck and my back hurt. It took a bit of effort, but I finally had a rough drawing to start my oil painting with. Before beginning the painting process, I erased some of the search lines and refined some of the drawing. I was happy with the general placement of the lines on my portrait, so at this point I'm going to take down the grid so that I can get a better view of the model. Hi. For the palette today, this is just a leftover green from another painting. I may or may not use it. It may come in handy, who knows. I have titanium white, fast matte, my monkey gray mix, which is just a mixture of recycled paint, Prussian blue, ivory black, alizarin crimson, medium cadmium red, terra rosa, burnt sienna, and yellow ochre. I started with my dark hair values using mixtures of black, burnt sienna, terra rosa, and a bit of fast matte. I'm not using any solvent other than rubbing alcohol to rinse off my brushes. I then worked in the midtones of the flesh. For the midtones, I used fast matte, burnt sienna, terra rosa, yellow ochre, and mixed in a bit of black to cool the mixtures off when necessary. For the lighter flesh tones, I added more white and yellow ochre, adding terra rosa around the eyes, nose, and cheeks. I'm not putting any oils or mediums into my paint at this stage. I'll be adding more oil into the second layer, which will go over this layer once it's dry. In the second layer, we'll be enhancing the lights and darks and adding more detail and color saturation. Emily has demands. So this is the progress that I've made today. I had about anywhere from an hour and a half to 2 hours with the model from life. The grid method was difficult, I have to say. I just found there was a lot of movement, like a little bit of movement from the model, but mostly from me working, like leaning forward and getting the initial drawing in was kind of a struggle, and it hurt. Like, shoulders hurt. I'm hoping to get the model back in and hopefully build up some of the lights and darks and get a full tonal range. I'm fairly happy with it. It looks like the model and things are generally in the right place, and I'm just going to lay in some more lights and darks and cooler colors. I find the cooler colors work best when they're put in the top layer of the painting. So using the grid was quite productive. Before I let this painting dry, I want to make sure that there are no hard lines or disturbing paint strokes that are going to interfere with my next layer. I'm going to soften any areas that I feel are too hard and knock back any brushwork that is too thick or distracting on the paint surface. I'm also going to fill in the background with that nice permanent green that was left over on my palette and fill in the shirt. I want to get the entire surface covered in this sitting so that I can really get the most out of my second sitting with my model. Right, well, here's where I got in the first day. I'm pretty satisfied. I got the entire surface covered, and the next time that I have the model here, I will be able to get some really productive work in. Now that the first layer is on, I am going to be letting this dry for a few days. Thank you so much for joining me for this stage of the process, and I hope that you'll join me for the final stages of this painting. And I promise you there will be no more grid. We're done with the grid. So have a good stretch, and I'll see you for the next stage of this painting video. What's up? Hey, what you up to down there? Are you just like tearing apart your toys?